I was standing in the driveway of a house I helped furnish when my sister opened the front door just wide enough to let the embarrassment escape before I could. She did not look at me the way sisters look at each other. She looked at me the way people look at a problem they have been trying to avoid all week. I had driven 40 minutes from my house in Brunswick to hers in Savannah because Raymond had called me that morning. He said Carol was feeling low, that the anniversary of their mother's passing had settled heavy on her, that it would mean a great deal if I came by for supper. I had baked a peach cobbler the moment I hung up the phone. Peach cobbler was the dessert our mother made every Sunday without fail, the one Carol always asked for on hard days. I wrapped it carefully in foil and set it on the passenger seat like something that deserved to be handled gently. By the time I pulled into their driveway, there were 3 cars I did not recognize already parked along the curb. Through the lit front windows, I could see movement, people dressed nicely, glasses being raised. I gathered the cobbler and walked to the door the way I always had, not as a guest, but as family. Carol opened the door before I knocked. She was wearing the pearl earrings I had given her for Christmas 2 years ago. She glanced past my shoulder at my old Buick, then back at me, and something shifted in her expression. "Dorothy," she said, keeping her voice low in that way she had when she wanted to manage a situation quietly. "I thought Raymond told you. We have colleagues here tonight. It is more of a professional dinner than anything." I shifted the cobbler in my arms. "He called me this morning and asked me to come." She exhaled slowly, the way someone exhales when they are deciding how much truth to dispense. "Right, well, it is just not really the right setting. You know how these things go. Raymond's partners are very particular, and we are trying to maintain a certain impression." She paused, then added the part that I would carry home with me like a stone in my coat pocket. "Honestly, Dorothy, you have to stop inserting yourself. People like us need space to move up. You understand. People like us." I was 67 years old, a retired surgical nurse with 31 years in operating rooms, and my younger sister had just sorted me into a lesser category on the porch of a house I had co-signed the mortgage for. When their credit was not enough to stand on its own, I nodded. I do not know why I nodded. My body made a decision without consulting the rest of me. I turned and walked back to my car and drove the 40 minutes home with the peach cobbler still warm on the passenger seat. I did not eat it when I got home. I set it on the kitchen counter and stood there with the lights off until the warmth left it entirely. It was not the first time Carol had made me feel like an afterthought, but that night, something about the particular way she had said it, so practiced, so ready, made me understand it was also not a careless moment. It was a position she had arrived at deliberately. I pulled a kitchen chair close to the counter and sat down. My house was quiet in the way that houses get quiet when they have absorbed too many years of a person's silence. The refrigerator hummed. The oak tree out front moved against the window in the dark. I reached into the drawer beside the stove where I kept the folder. I had started it 3 years earlier, not out of suspicion, just out of habit. Nurses document. It is what we do. We write down what was given, when, and to whom, because records protect everyone. Or so I believed. The folder was thick, green, with a rubber band around it that had started to crack at the edges. I laid it open on the counter and began spreading the pages out the way I used to spread charts before a long shift. The first page was the mortgage co-signature, dated 4 years back. Then the car note I had quietly taken over when Raymond lost a client and their payment bounced 2 months in a row. Then the credit card I had added Carol to, after she said she just needed a bridge. Just a few months, just until Raymond's business stabilized. Then the private school tuition for their youngest, because Carol had cried on the phone and said she could not bear to pull him out mid-year. Then the insurance premium, then the subscription services, then the grocery delivery account she had linked to my card without asking, then the home warranty plan, the streaming bundles, the gym membership she had signed up for using my billing information because hers had a hold. I counted. Twice. 94 recurring transfers and charges. 94 quiet agreements I had made with myself over the years that I would not make a fuss. That family did not keep score. That my sister needed me, and that was enough of a reason. I looked around my kitchen. The linoleum was curling at the corner near the back door. I had been meaning to fix it for 2 years. The faucet dripped every night, tapping out a rhythm I had learned to sleep through. My reading chair by the window had a cushion so flat I had folded a blanket under it for support. 9. My retirement check from the hospital system, combined with my Social Security, was not small, but it had been feeding 2 households without either of them knowing it, because I had never sat down and looked at it all at once. I closed the folder. The sound it made was unremarkable, just paper against paper. But sitting alone in that kitchen at 11th night, it sounded final. I did not sleep much. When morning came in gray and soft through the blinds, I dressed in my good navy slacks, the ones I wore when I wanted to feel like myself. I left the cobbler on the counter. I did not have the heart to throw it away yet. First Federal Coastal Bank had been my bank for 29 years. I had opened my account there the week I accepted the nursing position at the hospital, carrying a folder of documents and a cashier's check that represented everything I had saved up to that point. The teller back then was a young man named Earl who had since retired. The branch manager now was a woman named Patricia Gaines, mid-50s, steady hands, the kind of calm that comes from having seen most things twice. She recognized me from across the lobby and waved me to the corner office with the glass half-wall. She had barely settled into her chair before I set the folder on her desk. "Patricia," I said, "I need to stop 94 automatic transfers and charges tied to my primary and secondary accounts. All of them. Today." She looked at the folder the way doctors look at a chart, when they sense something has been missed for a long time. She did not ask if I was certain. She asked if I was all right. "I am becoming all right," I told her. "That is why I am here." She opened the folder and paged through it slowly. Her eyebrows did not move dramatically, but I watched something settle in her expression, a quiet kind of reckoning on my behalf. She began typing with the efficient pace of someone who had done serious things before and understood their weight. She had been working through the list for perhaps 10 minutes when she stopped. She looked at her screen for a moment longer than necessary, then looked at me. "Dorothy," she said carefully, "before we continue, I need to show you something that was flagged 2 days ago." She turned the monitor partway toward me. "There was an attempt to initiate a change to the beneficiary on your retirement account, and, separately, an inquiry into your home equity line." She paused. "The identifying information submitted did not fully match your file. We flagged both attempts and did not process them." My hands were folded in my lap. I made myself keep them still. "What name was submitted?" Patricia looked at the screen. "Carol Jean Whitmore." The room did not change. The light was the same. But something in my chest reconfigured itself, quietly and permanently, the way bones heal after a break, in a slightly different shape than before. I had told myself many things over the years to make the giving feel uncomplicated. That Carol needed more help because life had been harder for her. That Raymond meant well even when he did not follow through. That family had a different accounting system than the rest of the world, one where love was the currency and no one kept receipts. Every one of those explanations dissolved in the moment Patricia said my sister's name. "She did not succeed?" I asked. "No. The inconsistencies triggered our verification hold." "But Dorothy, this was not a casual inquiry. The documents submitted were partially prepared. Someone had done groundwork." I looked at the window behind Patricia's shoulder. A live oak stood outside, heavy with Spanish moss, the way trees in Savannah grow, draped and unhurried, as if they have been standing long enough to outlast most urgencies. "Add fraud alerts," I said. "Lock both accounts. Remove Carol from any secondary access. Change the security credentials on everything. And I would like to speak with someone about what steps I can take formally if this happens again. Patricia nodded without hesitation. I signed 11 documents before I left. My hand was steady for every one of them. The first message came before I reached the parking lot. My phone vibrated against my purse twice, then again, then in a cluster that told me the day had already started without me. Carol. Dorothy, the gym charge bounced this morning. Did you change something on the card? Then, Raymond's car payment is showing a return. This is not a good time for errors. Please sort this out. Then, Raymond himself. Dorothy, we need to speak. Several of our automatic payments did not process. I hope this was not intentional. I sat in my car in the bank parking lot and read each one the way I used to read memos posted on the nursing floor, noting the tone, noting what was asked and what was not asked. Not once in any of the messages did anyone say, "Are you all right?" Not once did anyone ask if something was wrong on my end. The only question was whether I would fix it. I put my phone in my bag and drove home. I changed into my gardening clothes and went out to the side yard where I grew tomatoes and zinnias in alternating rows. The soil was still soft from the rain 2 days prior. I pressed my hands into it and pulled out the weeds that had crept in along the fence line, working slowly, deliberately, the way I worked when I needed my body to do something concrete while my mind settled. My phone buzzed from the porch where I had left it. Buzzed again, then more. I let it. By mid-afternoon, I came inside and read through everything. The tone had shifted in the way tides shift, gradually and then all at once. The early messages were directive. The middle ones were confused. The later ones were frightened, which masked itself as anger the way it usually does. Carol. This is incredibly irresponsible, Dorothy. Do you understand what you have done? Raymond had a call with investors this afternoon, and the car returned. This is humiliating. Raymond, I am going to need you to call the bank and have them reverse these holds immediately. We have obligations. Carol, if you are doing this to make some kind of point, now is not the time. Call me. Then, 40 minutes later, a different message, softer, which meant she had recalibrated. Dorothy, I do not know what is happening, but please, just call me. I am your sister. I set the phone face down on the kitchen table and began making supper. They came the next morning. I heard Raymond's voice before I heard the knock, which was less of a knock and more of an announcement. I was at the kitchen table with my coffee when the front door shook in its frame. I set the mug down, walked to the door, and opened it. Raymond stood on the porch in his good shirt, the pressed one he wore to meetings, with Carol slightly behind him and to the left, the way she positioned herself when she wanted him to go first. Dorothy, Raymond said, we need to have a direct conversation. Good morning, I said. You can come in if you would like to speak calmly. He came in. Carol followed. She would not look at me directly when she first stepped through the door, which told me she had already chosen her angle and was holding it in place until she needed it. Raymond sat across from me at the kitchen table without waiting to be invited. Carol stood near the counter, arms folded, one hand touching her elbow the way she did when she was bracing. The mortgage payment did not process, Raymond said. The car notes are flagged. Carol's business subscriptions are down. You have disrupted every system we have in place. We need you to contact the bank today and restore everything. I looked at him steadily. 30 years as a surgical nurse will teach you a particular kind of stillness. The stillness of someone who has stood in a room where things were very serious and learned that panic never helped anyone. I am not going to do that, I said. Raymond blinked. He had not prepared for that sentence. I have reviewed every automatic payment connected to my accounts, I continued. 94 of them, most of which I never formally agreed to in writing, and several of which I did not even know existed until recently. I have ended all of them because they were mine to end. Carol's chin lifted. You are being vindictive. Because of dinner, because of one dinner, you are willing to tear everything apart. I am not tearing anything, I said. I am stopping. There is a difference. I have been paying your mortgage, your car notes, your children's tuition, your subscriptions, your groceries, and your gym membership simultaneously for 3 years, while my own kitchen floor curls up in the corner and my faucet has dripped every night for 2. I have done this without complaint, because I told myself it was love, but it was not love. It was habit and someone else's comfort. Raymond straightened in his chair. We rely on those payments, Dorothy. You know that. We have told you our situation. Your situation, I said, is that 2 working adults with one income from a law partnership and one from a real estate business have been living at a standard supported entirely by a retired nurse's pension and savings. And I let you, because every time I thought about stopping, Carol cried, or Raymond called, and said things were about to turn around. Carol moved away from the counter. Her voice had gone quiet, which was more concerning than when it was loud. Do not make yourself into a martyr, Dorothy. You offered. You always offered. We never demanded anything. You attempted to access my retirement account, I said. The room stopped. Raymond looked at Carol. Carol looked at a spot somewhere near the window. The bank flagged it. I continued. 2 days ago. An attempt to change my beneficiary designation and a separate inquiry into my home equity. Both submitted with your name and partial identifying information. Neither was processed, but both were documented. Carol's arms dropped from their folded position. I was looking into options, she said, her voice careful. I was not doing anything wrong. I was exploring. Exploring my accounts, I said. Without my knowledge. With documents that were partially prepared. You do not understand the financial pressure we are under. I understand it precisely, I said. Because I have been absorbing it for 3 years. Raymond stood up. He straightened his collar the way men do when they are searching for something to do with their hands. This is not finished, he said. For today, it is, I said. You should both go. They went. Carol looked back once from the driveway, not with remorse, with the expression of someone recalculating. The house was quiet again after their car pulled out. I sat at the table for a while and did not think about anything in particular. Then I got up and watered my tomatoes. She came 3 days later. Emma, Carol's oldest, 23 years old, studying library science at Armstrong. Living in a small apartment she paid for herself with money from 2 part-time jobs. She had always been quiet, observant in the way young people are when they grow up watching adults perform their lives. She knocked softly, twice, and when I opened the door she was holding a brown paper bag from the bakery on Bull Street and looking like she had not slept properly. Aunt Dorothy, she said, can I sit with you for a while? I stepped back and let her in. I put the kettle on without asking. She sat at the kitchen table with her hands wrapped around nothing yet, waiting for the mug I would bring her. We sat together for a few minutes. She ate half a blueberry muffin. I did not push. Mom is not going to tell you this, she finally said. But you should know. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone, scrolled through her photos and turned the screen toward me. The image was a document, then another, then 3 more. They were loan applications. My name was at the top of each one. Home equity loan, $47,000. A secondary line of credit against the property. A refinance document that would have restructured the mortgage I co-signed into something considerably larger. Carol's handwriting was on the margins of 2 of them, notations I recognized as instructions to a broker. I found these on the desk in her office when I went to feed the cat last week, Emma said. She was on the phone in the other room. I heard her say she needed to move before you could make any changes to your estate documents. Emma put her phone down and looked at me. Aunt Dorothy, I think she was going to put you on loans you did not know about. She had a notary's name written on one of them. I looked at the photos again. The amounts. The terms. If any of them had been executed, I would have been legally bound to debt that would have consumed the equity I had spent 31 years building. My home, the one I had paid for slowly and completely on my own, would have become collateral for their ambitions. I set Emma's phone down and folded my hands on the table. "Are you all right?" Emma asked me. "I am," I said. And I meant it more than I might have expected to. She told me that things at home had unraveled quickly. Raymond had been making calls. Carol had been in her office with the door closed for long hours. The private school had sent a notice about the tuition account. The grocery delivery app had stopped working. Emma said it quietly, not with satisfaction, just with the plainness of someone reporting what they had seen. "My little brother cried about not going back to Pinland Academy," she said, "and I felt terrible for him. But I also knew it was not your job to fix that." She looked up. "I pay my own rent, Aunt Dorothy. I pay my own car insurance. I am not asking you for anything. I just wanted you to know what I found." I reached across the table and covered her hand with mine. "You are the bravest person in that house," I said. She shook her head a little, embarrassed. "I just think people should stand on their own feet." "Yes?" I said. After Emma left, I called my attorney. Her name was Diane, and she had handled my estate planning 4 years prior. I told her what had been attempted and what Emma had photographed. I emailed the images to her within the hour. She called me back in the morning and told me that what Carol had been in the process of doing constituted fraudulent use of identifying information at minimum and potentially elder financial abuse under Georgia statute, given my age and the documented pattern of dependency she had cultivated. Diane filed a formal complaint with the state banking authority. She also sent a certified letter to Carol and Raymond outlining the documented attempts and notifying them that any further actions involving my name, accounts, property, or estate would be referred directly to law enforcement. I did not call Carol. I did not feel the need to announce any of it. The letter would do that. What followed in the weeks after was not dramatic in the way I might have expected. There was no public confrontation. No scene, just the quiet mechanics of consequence arriving on schedule. The SUV Raymond had leased through the account I had quietly maintained was repossessed on a Thursday. My neighbor, Mrs. Alcott, mentioned seeing the truck come for it. She had not known it had anything to do with me, and I did not explain. The private school called Carol to discuss an alternative payment arrangement. Raymond's law partnership, I heard through a mutual acquaintance, had asked him some questions about the nature of the loan applications because one of the brokers he had contacted was known to the firm. Carol's real estate listings sat longer on the market than they used to because, as Emma carefully told me, she had not been returning calls promptly. The certified letter had apparently arrived on a Tuesday. Carol called me that evening. I answered because I had decided I would. "You went to an attorney," she said. "Not a question." "I did. You are treating your own sister like a criminal. I am protecting my assets from someone who attempted to use them without my consent," I said. "If that constitutes being treated like a criminal, Carol, you might want to consider the reason." A long silence. Then, "We are struggling, Dorothy. Genuinely struggling. Raymond is under enormous pressure. The children are scared. I was trying to find a solution that would have indebted me for $47,000 without my knowledge." Another silence, shorter. "I made mistakes," she said, and those 3 words cost her something. I could hear it. "I should not have gone as far as I did." "No," I said. "You should not have." "What do I do now?" she asked, and her voice had gone small in a way I had not heard since we were children sharing a bedroom on the 2nd floor of our mother's house in Douglas. "You figure it out," I said. the same way you would have had to from the beginning if I had not been there to absorb it. You and Raymond sit down together and you figure out what you can actually afford, and you live inside of that. It will be uncomfortable, but people do it. She did not say anything for a moment. Then, are you all right? Truly? It was the first time in this entire chapter of things that she had asked. It came late. But it came. I am, I said. I am better than I have been in a long time. I bought myself a winter coat in November. Long, the color of warm caramel, with a deep collar and real lining. I had passed it in the window of the shop on Newcastle Street for 2 years and told myself it was impractical, that I did not need it, that the old one was still fine. I walked in and bought it the first cold morning after the leaves came down. I also called a contractor about the kitchen floor. Emma stopped by most Sundays now, sometimes with a book she thought I would like, sometimes just to sit. She had picked up a third part-time shift at the university library and was saving toward a used car she had already chosen and test-driven. She talked about her plans with the clarity of someone who had decided to take her life seriously. I listened to her the way I wish someone had listened to me at 23. One evening in December, there was a knock at the door that I recognized before I reached it. Slower than Raymond's, more deliberate than Emma's. Carol stood on the porch in a coat I had not seen before. One that was clearly not from the boutiques she usually favored. Practical, sensible. She was holding a tin, the old Christmas tin we had inherited from our mother, the one with the faded poinsettias on the lid. I made her shortbread, Carol said. Mom's recipe. I stepped back and let her in. We sat at the kitchen table, which I noticed her noticing. The floor had been repaired. New linoleum, clean and flat at every corner. The faucet no longer dripped. The reading chair by the window had a new cushion. She did not comment on any of it. She poured tea when I pointed to the kettle, and she set the tin between us and opened it. The shortbread was cut into the same rectangle shapes our mother always made, which meant Carol had found the old index card with the measurements written in pencil. We sat with each other for a while in the way that sisters sit when they have run out of performance and have only themselves left. Raymond is working with a financial advisor, she said. We are restructuring everything. Most important things are, she looked at her tea. I am sorry, Dorothy. Not in the way I would have said it before, as a thing to move past. I mean, I am actually sorry for what I tried to do, for what I let happen for 3 years without ever asking if it was too much. I had waited a long time for those words. Not with urgency, just with the patient knowledge that they existed somewhere and might eventually arrive. Now that they were here, they felt quieter than I had imagined. Not smaller, just quieter. Thank you, I said. She looked up. That is all? That is everything, I said. She stayed for 2 hours. We talked about our mother, about the house in Douglas, about a trip we had taken together once to see the coast at Cumberland Island when we were in our 20s and had thought we had unlimited future. We ate most of the shortbread. By the time she left, the sun had gone behind the live oaks, and the street was full of the gray-blue light that Savannah does better than anywhere I have ever been. I stood on my porch after her car pulled away, in my caramel coat, and let the cool air settle around me. The street was quiet. A dog barked somewhere down the block. The Spanish moss above my neighbor's fence moved in a small wind, unhurried, as it always had. The quilt I had been working on for 3 years sat in my living room in a basket near the reading chair. I had started it as a gift, adding squares and thinking about who I was making it for, and somewhere in the middle of everything I had let it sit unfinished because there had always been something else more urgent, someone else's urgent thing. That evening I picked it up and began working on it again. The needle moved through the fabric steadily, each stitch deliberate, each square a choice I had made about color and shape and what I wanted the finished thing to look like. For the first time in longer than I could account for, I was making something that was only going to be mine. I thought about the 94 transfers and what they had cost me in total over 3 years, and I did not do the arithmetic because the number did not matter anymore. What mattered was that the accounting was finished. The column had been closed, and what I had left was still substantial, still mine, still enough. I thought about Emma, who would figure out her life one honest shift at a time. I thought about Carol, who was learning, perhaps for the first time, the difference between a life that looked like success and a life that actually held together. And I thought about myself, 67 years old, retired surgical nurse, owner of a house in Brunswick with a new kitchen floor and a coat the color of something warm, woman who had given generously and quietly for longer than she should have, and who had finally, clearly, without anger or apology, decided to give generously and quietly to herself instead. The shortbread tin was still on the table. I had left one piece. I got up and brought it back to my chair and ate it by the lamp with the quilt in my lap and the street outside going dark and ordinary and completely, perfectly mine. There is a particular kind of quiet that only comes when you have stopped waiting for someone else to decide how much you are worth. I had not expected it to feel so steady. I thought it might feel like victory or relief or something louder than what it was, but it felt like this: warm, light, a finished stitch, the last piece of shortbread. A house that was only responsible for the one person who lived in it. It had taken me too long to learn that generosity given from fear is not generosity at all. That covering for people does not build them up. It holds them suspended at the height you keep them, unable to fall and unable to grow. The kindest thing I had ever done for my sister was the thing that had looked, from certain angles, like cruelty. And the kindest thing I had ever done for myself was finally understanding the difference. I set the quilt aside and turned off the lamp and sat for a moment in the dark before going to bed. Outside, the oak tree moved against the window, a branch against glass, slow and familiar, like something that had always been there and was not going anywhere. I had not changed. I was still the woman who baked things for people she loved, who showed up, who remembered the recipes written in pencil on old index cards. I was still that woman. I had simply also become the woman who knew when to come home.